Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. In today's episode, we're going to go out looking for some resources because I want to build a fishing shack here on this island. And then there are a couple of resources that I want to get that we simply don't have right now, or we don't have in large enough quantities. First of all, I'll point out that I did a little bit more fishing after the episode ended and immediately fished up a fishing rod that had exactly the same enchantments as the one that we got in the last episode, so I ended up having a backup at least, which will be kind of nice to have just in case something happens to this one, but for the most part it shouldn't because it's got unbreaking and mending. It's pretty much a permanent part of our kit right now. Secondly, I've made a quick change to our enchantment setup here, putting a chest on this side so that we can have some enchanted books or some unenchanted books stored in here, along with some lapis and some tools, just in case we want to test out some enchantments or combine things in the anvil around our enchantment setup. So I'm going to grab my spare bed from down here because night is close to falling, but we are going to go on a bit of a trek today, and I'm going to head east towards the rising sun once it actually rises over there, because we've already been west to find the jungle biomes and the savanna biomes over there, the warmer biomes of the world. And while the cold biomes aren't necessarily going to be in the opposite direction, I think it's always a good idea to check the opposite direction to see what's out there. And in my case, I'm looking for a biome that will give us spruce wood. I'm kind of annoyed that we haven't got hold of spruce wood so far, as it is one of my favorite wood types in the game. And I think it'll be essential for building our fishing shack out there on the island. We've already been a little bit north and south. To the south is that dark oak forest, and to the north we found a plains biome with the pillager outpost watchtower over there, and a few other bits and pieces, a couple of hills around. Oh, there's some eggs laid on the ground by some of these local chickens. We'll grab some of those on the way past. And the furthest east we have been is over here at the lily pad lake, where we gathered a few of our early resources, a bit of early iron and that kind of stuff. I think, if I'm careful, around here, we're going to skirt around the edge of this lake and continue heading east, and we'll see what we end up finding. Over here to our north is a mountain that has a giant cleft all the way through it. That's pretty impressive looking. Also, a ruined nether portal over there. You can notice that in the distance that is the pillager outpost that we saw in a previous episode. Over here we have a ruined nether portal, which looks pretty dramatic out here on the open plains. We have a couple of rolling hills, some rolling rivers as well, and I'm going to use the rivers for transport a little bit here because the rivers are wide enough that we can row down them for a little while until they make land. Oh my goodness. This looks like it might be pillager territory, really, because there's an outpost up there on a hillside as well. On that outcropping of hillside over there, we have yet another pillager watchtower. Well, that's kind of a surprise. I'm surprised to see two of them in such a short span, but at least that gives us a chance to raid one or two of them here and there. There's a massive lava lake down here, and that's also kind of in the shape of a lily pad, although a slightly more dangerous one. Well, if there's one thing I can say about this world, it's that birch forests are everywhere. So we're going to have to go quite some distance before we find something that isn't a birch forest, I feel. But I've sort of been thrown off here by the natural shape of the landscape. I've been going around these hills when I feel like I should probably be trying to go over some of them. So I'm going to try and continue east in more of a straight line, and we'll see what we end up with as we get further out here. Well, sort of unbelievably, we've hit another dark oak forest, and behind it, another jungle, with no immediate sign of spruce trees anywhere around here from what I can tell. There's a series of hills that kind of outline this area, and all of them are covered with birch trees. And in pretty much every direction that seems to be the case. We have layers of birch, dark oak, and then jungle in the background. Now let's see if we can turn our attention more towards these hills to the north. Because if these hills have any points where the elevation gets a little bit higher, they might turn into grove biomes, which give us another chance at getting hold of some spruce wood. But yep, in this case, it seems to be jungle in every direction, and another ruined portal over there. Well, in that case, we may as well try going north, and it looks like the landscape has already taken up my vendetta against birchwood and is burning sections of it around another lava lake. But it's at least clear that this jungle is home to a couple of lush caves below it, because I'm seeing azalea trees here and there as well. Well, I've now traveled north about 1,500 blocks, and all we're seeing once again is dark oak, jungle, and birch everywhere. So I think I might try heading back through the dark oak forest that we found first, and see if we end up finding something on the other side of that river. Oh, finally! As I was skirting around the outside of the terrain here, making sure that I could find my way back home, I stumbled upon a spruce forest, finally. And already over here, we have some denizens of a spruce forest. We have a fox facing off with a sheep. The foxes and sheep shouldn't end up harming each other, but occasionally you'll find wolves here in these forests, and they may occasionally go after the sheep if they want to. Foxes are much more keen on going after chickens, and we're not going to do much with foxes right now because you can't really tame them, you can't really domesticate them in any way. They tend to be a bit of a handful, and they don't provide all that much for us right now. But there are some other things that we're looking for here in the taiga biome, specifically this, spruce wood, my beloved. Finally, we get a chance to be reunited, and I'm going to grab a bunch of this, grab a few saplings, and we should be able to start regrowing them back at our base. Fortunately for us, spruce wood saplings drop from the leaves pretty regularly. It's not like jungle wood where you have to make sure that you have a certain amount of saplings and that you're only getting 1 or 2 in the process. Spruce drops about as much as any other sapling does, so it's nice and easy to get hold of a bunch of these, and we can even grow a 2x2 variant of the spruce tree, which can have its own problems, but can also provide us with a whole bunch of wood. While we're here in the taiga biome, here is a wolf, and we don't have any bones on us, unfortunately, because if we had any bones, we could try feeding them to the wolf, who gets a little bit interested if we have food, but can only be tamed by bones, and that way the wolf would be acting more like a dog. It'd be a pet, we could bring it with us in much the same way that we did the parrot in previous episodes. For now, unfortunately, this wolf will have to remain wild, and it's important that you don't end up hurting wolves if you have a wolf out here in the wilderness. For a start, they don't drop anything, so they're not really worth attacking, but if you end up with a bunch of wolves around you, they will gang up on you as a pack if you end up hitting them, so I prefer not to do that, and I'm not going to be demonstrating that in the video. Over there on the opposite bank is actually what I was looking for from this taiga biome. Over here, we have some sweet berries, which are found in taigas, but not the snowy taiga variant as far as I can tell, so it's probably worth grabbing a few of these while we have them here in the taiga. We can just left-click on them to break them. Sweet berry bushes have a tendency to harm the player if you try and walk through them, and they get a little bit sticky the same way cobwebs do if you're walking through them, so just be careful whilst you're traversing your taiga. You can always left-click on them to break them, of course, and if you have sweet berries, you can eat them. Of course, they're nice and snackable as food, but if you're looking down at the ground at an organic block, if you right-click, it will actually plant another sweet berry bush, which will slowly grow over several stages into the large bush here that's producing the berries. You can also right-click on these to harvest the berries without breaking the plant at all, which makes them quite diverse in the way you can use them. You can cultivate the berries for a larger scale farming operation if you want a bunch of them, or you can leave them around as decorative bushes. That's sort of all we needed from this taiga biome for now. We've got everything we wanted in terms of the wood and some saplings and the sweet berries if we want to replant those, so I'm going to head on home and we're going to tackle the next stage of this episode. In fact, the point of the episode at all, going out and mining a huge vein of copper. Because it might feel like what we've gathered in previous episodes was a decent amount of copper, but it's actually not that much. Since we have to use 9 copper ingots to make a full copper block, what I've gathered so far amounts to less than a stack of full blocks of copper, and I want to build the roof of my fishing shack out of copper so that we can study its effects. Now, copper blocks will break down into 4 cut copper in the stone cutter if we want to use that recipe, but for right now, I think I want to make a mixture of the copper blocks and the cut copper blocks, so I'm going to need a little bit more than that. We have a little more that we can smelt later, but I think this is an ideal time to go and investigate that large copper vein that we found in the cave across the ocean. Back down here in our now familiar ravine cave, a couple of episodes ago, we went to the right and we discovered that in this cave there is a huge vein of copper. Not only is it right here surrounded by the granite, but it continues that way into the cave and potentially downwards into the earth. And so what we're going to do is try and dig out as much of this as we can. Now, right now I've only got a Fortune 3 Unbreaking 3 pickaxe. I don't have efficiency, so this is potentially going to take quite a while, because there is apparently the potential for hundreds, if not thousands, of copper ore blocks to be present in one of these veins, and it means digging through the granite in order to find more of them. I've also brought a lot of torches with me, because in the process of this, we're going to be creating a lot of dark spaces, and I can already see the dark space over here taken up by a practical army of skeletons. That's not to mention the Enderman at the back of the cave here. Yep, I can get the skeletons to shoot each other, though. That's going to be less of a problem for me. There we go. Finally got to take care of those. And as for the Enderman, I think we'll leave him be for now. We have a little bit of natural light coming in at the top of the cave here, so we'll only need to use a few torches, but it seems like there are a few other mobs in the area that we'll need to take care of first. I would definitely prefer not to catch too many unpleasant surprises while we're mining this vein out, though, so I'll light up a couple of the darker looking areas, and we can return over here to where the copper was found. Now, I think the technique we're going to employ here really is to mine out every block of granite we end up seeing, because there is potential for more copper ore to be hiding behind it. Typically, when I've seen these in the past, when I've been looking at them in testing worlds, you've really got to dig around inside the granite to make sure that the granite isn't concealing more copper. And once you mine out the copper, you mine out the granite behind it, and you often uncover more copper. So there's going to be a lot of digging around to do. However, it's worth noting that every time you run into granite in the world isn't always going to be part of the huge vein. Even side by side here, we have a couple of patches of granite. This one right here that kind of leads into the wall there, and up here doesn't seem to have a great deal of copper attached to it. It's not like this mix of granite and copper ore that we see in the wall over here. It seems to just be its own blob of granite, as you would find generating elsewhere in the world without the copper attached to it. So we're going to be a little bit judicious about where we end up mining, but for the most part, if we end up mining around here, yep, there we go, we're starting to uncover a little bit more copper ore. There's another patch of it here. That uncovers even more copper ore. That leads directly to granite. We mine out the granite, we find a little bit more copper ore, and we're just going to keep going through this vein until our pickaxe is basically on its last legs, and then hopefully we will find something we can use to repair it back at our base. You will also occasionally get lucky and find entire raw copper blocks inside of here, and that's your signal to start converting some of your copper into raw blocks to save a little bit of space. There we go, we can convert all of those. And as a general rule of thumb, because you need 9 raw copper to make a block of raw copper, and you need 9 copper ingots to make a full block of copper, you can pretty much guarantee that you'll get a 1-to-1 ratio when you convert this copper into ingots. So for every raw block we have, that means another block of copper that we can use for building, and potentially 4 blocks of cut copper if we break it down in a stone cutter. We even have a section of the vein over here where the copper ore has left the granite generation, or it's been taken over by a cave opening here with some andesite around it. So you won't always find the copper explicitly buried in the granite, but you're going to find a fair amount of copper leaches out into the caves on either side, which is a fun little variation in it. But once again, we dig into the wall, we find a little bit more granite, we keep mining, we find a little bit more copper. Now, if you're trying to seek out these large copper veins in particular, you're not going to find them everywhere in the world. They will be in basically every biome, but elevation is important. These copper veins will only generate, I think, below about Y50 and always above 0. So you're never going to find a copper ore vein that starts generating below deep slate level, although I expect the tails of some of these huge copper veins will end up dipping down into deep slate territory. It'll only be a couple of blocks before the vein starts to cut off. And naturally, you are going to find other patches of material here and there. There's a bit of iron around here. There's also a bit of coal, which is going to be very useful once this area starts becoming a little darker and we need to light our way through it. The other rule of thumb with these veins is to be inquisitive. There is 1 copper up here on the wall, which if I mine that, reveals a bit of granite, and that could just as easily be a continuation of this copper vein and have some more copper ore behind it. Let's start digging some of that out, and yes, we do end up revealing a few more blocks of copper ore, so we're just going to keep digging through this in any direction that we can until our pickaxe is close to wearing out, and then I think we'll call it a day. But hopefully by the end of this we should have come away with a huge amount of copper to turn into copper blocks. And of course, having a fortune pickaxe is going to be a massive benefit to us here, because we're getting more copper than we would if we used an unenchanted pick. So I honestly think to get the most out of these copper veins, even though they're huge and you would get a lot of resources anyway, using fortune on them is really an opportunity that can't be overlooked. For now, because my pickaxe durability is a little limited, I don't have mending on this pickaxe yet, and I also don't have efficiency, we're just going to be mining out the ore blocks that I find as we see them. But I think in future, it might be fun to excavate all of the granite and stone from around one of these veins and leave the ore blocks there, just so we can get a look at exactly how these veins end up generating, because the fact that you keep digging through and you keep finding ore blocks is honestly kind of fascinating to me. These are a new addition to terrain generation for Minecraft 1.18. You won't find them in previous versions, although on some occasions it may seem like you found a huge vein of something like coal. There are sometimes just large patches of ore that generate together in previous versions, but never with this style of generation or this quantity. And Mojang said when they added these into the game that they wanted to add a bit more strategy to mining. They wanted there to be a vein of material that you could follow in all sorts of different directions and would lead to a very rewarding amount of resources at the end of it. You will only find huge veins of copper or iron ore though, so don't go looking for huge veins of diamond. It's not going to happen that way, at least not in the current world generation. But at this stage I've been mining this area out for just over 10 minutes and I've already got 2 stacks and 21 of the raw copper blocks. So that means 2 stacks and 21 of regular copper blocks as well. I think that's almost enough for our house, but I just want to keep digging at this stage. So I'm going to leave you folks here for a second. I'm probably going to spend a lot more time mining this vein out this morning, and once we come back, I'll show you how much copper I was able to collect before the durability on my fortune pickaxe gave out. Hey folks, welcome back. So I decided that I wasn't going to wear my pickaxe down to a total stub, at least because right now I don't have efficiency and this was taking a little bit longer than I expected without that. But I have decided to hollow out a section of one of these copper veins so that you can see in slightly better detail exactly how many copper blocks we are finding. Because as you're gathering one at a time, and you're definitely picking up a lot of it, it's a little bit difficult to get a picture of exactly how these things generate if you remove all the blocks around them. And so I've done my best to do that here in survival. Obviously, you could find one of these in creative and replace all the blocks that weren't copper with air, and then you would really get a much bigger picture of how big these things are, because this is just a fraction of this vein. I've already dug out an area through the wall over there that goes down to deep slate level, and obviously this section here heads off in a completely different direction, and all of this is uncovering copper as well. But if we look around here, we have this kind of vein-like structure, even including some full raw blocks here, that leads off in this direction, and maybe like every 3rd or 4th block in an area is a copper ore. There is just a ton of it, and it tends to stretch up in different directions as it twists and turns through the rock. And of course, as we reach the diorite here, you might be tempted to think that's where it ends, but chances are the diorite has just replaced some granite during world generation, and as we dig through the diorite, we start to find more copper ore as well. If that hits granite on the other side, then the vein could very well continue in this direction. It goes down, it goes up, it goes left and right, it goes all over the place. So we're going to mine up all of these copper ores. We'll probably take the other ores I've uncovered, like the iron and the lapis, with us as well. But I think that's probably where we're going to finish up collecting copper for the day, because mining out this entire vein is incredibly ambitious with the equipment we've got on us right now and very little diamonds left over to repair my diamond pickaxe. I'm not certain I want to do that right away. So we're just going to mine out all of the copper blocks that I can see. I'm obviously going to uncover a few more of those in the process, but I'm going to let the majority of it lie there. And once we collect all this stuff up, it's back to the house to smelt it, and let's get ready to build our fishing shack. So here we are back at the house. I'm going to drop off a bunch of the stone and stuff that we've brought back with us, but of course I'll have to do a return trip to bring back all of the granite that we pulled out of the ground. There was an awful lot of it in that ore vein. We can put some of the blocks of lapis here in our enchanting chest, and we've got a bit of redstone and iron and a couple of other precious materials that we can do some more with. However, our main concern is the copper, and for right now, there's a lot of copper. Remember that we have to turn this back into raw copper in order to smelt it, and we can only smelt a stack of raw copper in one blast furnace at a time. This, I think, means that we should probably take our first steps into automating that process a little bit, so we can leave the copper smelting in the background while we make preparations to do a little bit more work on the house. And so I'm going to grab a few more of the jungle logs that we've got in here. I'm going to turn those into some chests, and we're going to convert at least 4 of those into hoppers. I'm also going to cook a little bit more of this stone to turn it into smooth stone, and we'll craft a few more furnaces together so we can convert them into blast furnaces. So crafting 2 more blast furnaces out of the smooth stone, the furnaces, and the iron ingots, we're going to take these outside, and using these hoppers we can automatically put items into the blast furnaces and extract the finished items from the blast furnaces as well. The first thing we're going to do is put down a chest, which will be our output chest. All of the smelted copper is going to end up in here. We're going to place 2 hoppers facing into the back of that, and hoppers have a directional element to them. If you place them into a block like that, then the output is going to be facing downwards into that block. In this case though, we wanted to place them attached to this chest, which redirects the hopper into the chest. So we need to shift click on the side of a chest to attach it like so. Hoppers work in various different ways. We can throw items into a hopper like so, and they will disappear and be redirected by the hopper, if I throw them correctly, into the chest here. So the hopper takes items from the top of it, from the input, and outputs them in the direction of whichever way the output is facing. If it doesn't find something that it can put the items in, like a chest or a dispenser or something like that, then the items will just stay in the hopper permanently. And there are lots of things we can do with hoppers. We will use them in great detail a lot later, but for now we're going to place the 2 blast furnaces on top of these. And what that means is when we smelt something in the blast furnace, I'll just put a couple of sticks in so that we can see this in action. It's going to smelt that piece of copper very fast. The copper ingot disappears from the output slot of the blast furnace immediately and ends up in the chest down here fully smelted. Putting 2 blast furnaces side by side like this will allow them to channel both their outputs into this chest. And we could always, of course, put more blast furnaces around the outside of the chest here. We could have 4 of them all going at once, and it would all end up in this output chest. But instead, we're going to use the hoppers to direct items into the blast furnace. And it's important that we choose the right place to input, because if you attach a hopper to the side of a furnace, a blast furnace, a smoker, it can be any one of these furnace type things. If we put some regular items in here, that's not going to do anything, because the side input of a blast furnace is for accepting fuel. If I put the coal in here, you'll notice it drains away and it goes into the fuel slot of the blast furnace here. If I put some items to be smelted in here, they don't go into the top slot of the furnace where the input items need to go. To do that, we have to shift click once again and place the hoppers on top of the furnace. Now when we place the raw copper into this hopper, it disappears into the top space of the blast furnace, and the blast furnace will start smelting it. And now we can get a bunch of raw copper. It will slowly be input into this blast furnace, and the blast furnace will just merrily smelt the entire thing. We could do the same with the furnace next door, and we could fill up the entire hopper with items like that if we wanted to, but that's not quite what we want to do. Instead, we're going to create an input chest up here on the top of those 2 hoppers. Once again, by shift clicking to make sure we don't open the hopper's inventory, we can place a double chest from which items will be extracted evenly by both of these hoppers. If I put a stack in here, you'll notice the items start disappearing 2 at a time because both furnaces are extracting them at once. And so we can put all of the raw copper that we've gathered in here, and as long as there is enough fuel left in the blast furnaces, it will be smelted over time into copper ingots, from which we can craft it into full copper blocks. This is the point at which we want to make sure we have enough fuel, because of course these blast furnaces will burn through the coal quite quickly, and once they run out, the furnace will no longer be able to process anything and we'll end up with a bunch of copper just sat there not going anywhere. So one cool thing about automating furnaces like this is that the output will always be gathered automatically, meaning we never end up with 64 items just hanging around in the blast furnace output slot waiting to be collected. Stuff will always be emptied out of the blast furnaces while there is a hopper underneath it and while the chest in front of it isn't all full. And so that gives us the opportunity to use types of fuel that can smelt more than 64 total items. And so we're going to run back into the house real fast to see if we have a couple of those things handy. The first thing we can do is create full blocks of coal using 9 coal, which might seem like a bit of a waste since each of these coal items can smelt 8 items each. So 9 coal could smelt 72 items, items? Well, the full block of coal actually gets a bonus and can smelt up to 80 items, which effectively means it ends up being more fuel efficient than bringing in 10 pieces of coal to smelt 80 things. We can put that in our blast furnace. The whole coal block gets consumed right away, so we don't want the blast furnace to run out of items because then some of the fuel would be wasted. But considering the items are still being fed in from the hoppers at the top, we can smelt 80 pieces of raw copper without any wastage of fuel. And the good thing about blocks of coal is they stack, so we can put 2 of them in this furnace, we can put 2 of them in there, they will stack to 64, and if you have bulk smelting operations like this to do, blocks of coal could be one of the most effective things you can put in here. But that's not going to quite be enough to smelt all of this raw copper, and right now we're running precious low on coal. So that's why I've crafted some buckets, and we're going to take a quick trip back over to the jungle where I can remember a lava lake being nearby. Yes, here we are back at our ruined portal lava lake right here in the edge of the jungle, and we have a huge amount of lava here that we could put in buckets if we wanted to. Let's gather up a few of these. We have 10 buckets on us, so we can grab a bunch of the lava sources one by one out of the edge of this lake, and in our inventory, very dangerous but very useful, we have 10 full buckets of lava. A bucket of lava placed in a furnace as fuel will smelt 100 items continuously, or at least it will give the furnace smelting power for 100 items. Obviously, if 100 items don't end up going through there, then that fuel will be wasted too. And you'll notice the bucket disappeared immediately. That's just been put into the chest where the output items are so that it can be collected up again and ready to collect more lava if the case may be. Now, something to note about lava is that even though it's collected up in buckets the same way water is, 2 buckets of lava cannot be used to make an infinite source of lava. Even if we place them on opposite corners here, and even if we end up placing another lava source here and another lava source here to create a full flat lake of lava, once we collect these up, they will not run together again and create another lava source block. And as we take the lava out of this pool here, it disappears completely. The lava is finite. It does not reproduce in the same way that water does, because frankly that might be a little bit too dangerous. But more recently, a way has been added to the game to make lava a renewable resource. So it's not about renewability of lava, it's probably a little bit more about being able to clear lava out of dangerous areas, because lava can be a bit of a pain if it's left to its own devices. So we are going to create one more hopper. I'll need to run in and grab a bit more iron for this. And we're going to have one of these furnaces running on buckets of lava and one of them running on coal blocks. We're going to dump all of the buckets of lava into a fuel input on the side of this blast furnace. All those buckets of lava are going to be added to the hopper. One of them is going to be put in the fuel slot, and once the fuel from here burns down, it's going to consume a bucket of lava, and an empty bucket is going to appear in this chest, and the whole thing is going to repeat again. Now we're going to put some more blocks of coal into the other blast furnace, and maybe we'll switch that out to lava power, or we'll go and gather a little bit more coal so that that can keep smelting copper, because while the blocks of coal are going to be consumed a little bit faster because they only smelt 80 items as opposed to the lava's 100 items, blocks of coal can be more effective overall because they can stack to 64. Lava buckets are very powerful, but you can't stack them in the same inventory space, meaning you would need a double chest of lava buckets, that's 52 lava buckets, to match the output of a stack of coal blocks. A stack of coal blocks, 64 coal blocks, each smelting 80 items, can produce 5,120 smelted items if used effectively, which you'd have to get 52 lava buckets in order to match. And those 52 lava buckets would have to be fed in from a chest like this, whereas a stack of coal blocks can just go in the blast furnace's fuel slot, and you could even have a full chest of full stacks of coal blocks if you were rich enough, if you had enough coal left from gathering out there in the world. But as we can see, this blast furnace setup is slowly chewing its way through all the copper we've dumped into it so far, and so we're going to wait to smelt a little bit more of this. We're going to start converting it into copper blocks, and we're going to use that to roof our fishing shack. But I think that's probably where we're going to wrap up this episode. We've done a bit of exploring, we've taken a huge chunk out of that huge copper vein, but there is still a lot more left to be gathered, and we've taken our first look at automating the process of smelting. That's where we're going to leave it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Thank you so much for watching. My name has been Pixlriffs, and I do hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on it for me, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye for now.